Good morning. So glad you're here with us. Well, those of you with us online and those in the room, as we are celebrating today, some of you are participating in the room today without goldfish crumbs all over you, that our children's ministry has started back up and is full speed ahead, and our children's staff are excited, and so we celebrate that today and want you to be aware. Some of you are in this service right now, and you will be volunteering next service. We wanted to say thank you. Thank you for those of you that give and serve in that time, and just we just wanted to take a moment and just celebrate you, and probably we should be praying for you, so that'll work. Hey, we want to make, this series, this Untangle, is about us making sense out of the world. You know this, I know this, life is hard. It's challenging. There are difficulties, there are hurdles, there are roadblocks. Our world has been tainted by sin, and you know this, and I know this. And so sometimes I think we forget just how hard life is. And there are markers in our life, there are things that we can grab a hold of, we can hold tight to in times when our world seems to be maybe even just spinning out of control. We cling to these things. And what I have found, there are things that when we are holding on to, that whatever you may be going through personally or as a family or maybe in your business, when we hold on to these things, they tend to untangle the mess around us. So the marker or the thing we're going to hold on to this week is the word love. Now, last Sunday, hopefully you were celebrating Valentine's Day, and we as a country and a world, that is something big, and there are some definite icons, there's some imagery that takes place when we think of the word love or Valentine's Day. And so I got some pictures I want to just kind of show you right now. The first one is date. You think about going out on a date. You can see that, and isn't that cute? You think about that. The other one is some of you went out to the grocery store early before anybody got up and bought some roses. Some of you planned ahead. Some of you did not. Maybe you got some chocolate. And, these are all things that make us think. And others just think of the romance and long walks on the beach when it's 14 below zero. Yeah, that's great. Feels good. Wake you up. And the other is just nasty candy. I don't know anybody that really likes those. But they're always for sale, but they taste like chalk. Nobody wants those. Please don't give those as a Valentine gift. Save that for the children. They don't care. They just want the sugar. So it's that weekend, we think of love, and now that we're kind of thinking in those terms, we're moving down that line. I want to look back as what we started Wednesday, just a little bit of a recap. The word that we were hanging on to was justice. And how does justice help us make sense of the world? And justice was demonstrated at the cross and through the resurrection. It's how things were made right. It was paying that ultimate price. Because a lot of times when we think of justice, we think of swift action, judgment being sent down. But justice, biblical justice, it's not really about starting over or the end of it. It's really about making the world right and restoring, making it new. So when Jesus pays this ultimate price at the cross and is resurrected and comes to life, he is saying it's all made new. A whole new world begins. So when we go to love, our English language is really limited. We have really one word for love. And we use it when we're talking about our spouse, when we're talking about our children, when we're talking about our grandchildren. We also use the same word when we talk about our favorite place to get a taco. And so it's really kind of limited because we use this for everything. And so sometimes when someone says, I really love you, we don't know if they mean it in the terms of the way they feel about their spouse, their children, or their favorite taco place. So the word love is really limited. But in the Greek language, it had at least 4 different definitions, and there are some writers that argue it had up to 7. 7 different phrases that they would have used for the word love. The first one was eros, this romantic love. The other was this storge, this family love. And the philia, brotherly love, like when you think of Philadelphia. and then agape, divine love. So no matter which definition of love or where you would say, I love you, or I love this, or whatever that is, if you take any of those four, it really comes down and boils down into one more word. It comes down to relationship. How do I connect with X? How do I connect here? See, I believe that there's a challenge with us. So when we talk about this landmark or this marker, this footing that we hold on to when we're trying to untangle our world, we're trying to untangle the mess in which our world is, there's an issue with this word love. There's an issue with it. And we got to kind of make sense of this. So just hang with me for a second. See, at times, I believe we use the word love, and it can become an obsession. And when it becomes an obsession, then our passion rises up and it blinds us. So love can become an obsession, and the obsession can be driven by the passion that blinds us, and we don't see things clearly. For example, there are people in the room, people, maybe you're married to that person, they live in your house, they're on your neighborhood. They all of a sudden this year, they have become fitness junkies. They are all in. They own every color of yoga pant you can imagine. And they work out religiously. In fact, they skip everything else in life because that is now their new obsession, their new passion. And we can justify it by saying, I love it. When someone says, I love it, we automatically step back and go, I can't argue with that because they love it. Then we feel the same way when someone says, we couldn't help it. We just fell in love. We just fell in love. And we go, because love feels good, we go, wow, you just fell in love. Yeah. It didn't matter to us that they were married to other people. It just feels good to be able to say love. There are times that the word becomes a challenge to us because we use the word love to get off the hook. We pretend it justifies our actions. So there is a challenge with the word love. Even though our word is very limited in our language, is a challenge with it because love feels good. Love sounds inviting. And every one of us, deep down, we want to be loved. We want to give love. We want to share love. We crave to be in relationship. As we talked about this earlier, the COVID killed community, this whole thing of living in isolation. None of us, nobody, I don't care how big of an introvert you may be, none of us desire to live in that type of isolation because we crave authentic, transparent relationships. So this word, even though there's some challenge with it, it is something we can hold on to help us and untangle the mess of our world. And so we're going to look at this in the book of John. He refers to himself as the beloved disciple, and this book is about love. And the epicenter of this book is John 3:16. And this is a Bible verse you've probably had remembered or you were taught at some point when you were younger. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, and that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. So God's great love for us, which feels good, involves sacrifice of his Son, which we're willing to take, and it happened on our behalf. So justice and love working together, hand in hand, to bring the perfect relationship. And creation was intended to live in relationship. And God was intending all through creation to live in relationship with us. I mean, God even had angels, but he needed more. He wanted more. He desired more. He craved the relationship you and I can bring. He had the vastness of creation, but it wasn't enough. He chose to create man for this purpose, to live in relationship, to walk with him in the garden. Think about that. We were made to walk in the garden with the creator of the universe. We were made that. But when sin enters the garden, it puts a wedge between God and us. So systems and laws are created to help us keep a temporary peace. It's not what God designed at all for the initial relationship. But this plan was put into action. It was put into an action to eliminate this need for the systems and the law. We would no longer need a priest to go on our behalf. We would no longer have to do these weekly sacrifices or monthly or yearly sacrifices to God on our behalf. But the plan had a timeline as well. In John 13:1, it said it was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Catch this next line. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. He loved them to the end. Now, the Greek translation for this passage, to the end, actually is translated out to the goal. So this great love of God had a goal. It had a finish line. And it was to put us in right relationship with him, not by lowering his holy standard. Love and justice don't lower the holy standard. It brings us up. It's by lifting us up beyond what we deserve. I love this quote from N.T. Wright. He says this, there was nothing that love could do, that love did not do, that Jesus did not do. See, Jesus tells his disciples in John 15, no greater love than this, than a man to lay down his life for his friends. And he goes on to say, I call you friends. So love pays the ultimate price for the ultimate reward, to live in relationship. To live in relationship. God becoming man. Now, I think we blow by that a lot of times, and we don't grab a hold of what that really means, that God was fully God, and he was fully human in Jesus. And the goal was restoration based on this love relationship, that a holy God would live with us, walk with us, talk with us, be in the garden with us. Now, maybe we're so used to saying God became man or this incarnate that we just take it for granted. But, one of the things is my friend Sandy sitting right over here yesterday said, it doesn't astound us anymore. We just take it for granted. It just doesn't astound us anymore. It's amazing that God became man and wants to be with you. He wants to be with me. And I know me, and I know some of you. I don't want to be with you all the time. You don't want to be with me. I feel like I've got a shelf life about 45 minutes. And then some of you are going to go, ooh, that felt like 7 days. I get it. Spiritual gift of abrasion. I'm with you. I'm not offended. But we miss the fact that this God who becomes man wants to be with you, wants to be with me. Craves relationship. So it brings clarity to situations that may be confusing. So when we read in John chapter 2, verse 13, when it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle and sheep and doves and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and he overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market. His disciples remembered it was written, zeal for your house will consume me. And the Jews then responded to him, what sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all of this? And Jesus answered them, destroy this temple and I'll raise it again in 3 days. And they replied, it has taken us 46 years to build this temple and you're going to raise it in 3 days? But the temple he had spoken of was his body. See, when Jesus is clearing this table, he's sending one message for sure, and there were multiples. But the first one is, he goes, this is my dad's home. This is not what we're going to do here. See, the temple, the tabernacle, was built as a connection point between God and man. And he was no longer talking about the building. He was now talking about himself. Because of this justice, this sacrifice, this incarnate is here to make peace and to build that gap in relationship with us. So stay with us. So if we go back to the garden, God walked with man in the garden. We know that. After the fall, we fast forward all the way to Moses, so sin enters the garden. We fast forward all the way to Moses, and after the exit out of Egypt, we cross the Red Sea, and the first thing they do, it wasn't the pinnacle, was not the 10 Commandments, it wasn't the Red Sea, it wasn't the manna, it wasn't any of that. The pinnacle was, it was time to build the tabernacle. It was time to build the temple for God to dwell with his people, to live in community, to be in relationship with them. So when we read John chapter 1, verse 14, and it says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So the Word became flesh. God becomes human to dwell among us. And see, this would have been radically crazy for the first century church to understand, because the Greek gods stayed on Mount Olympus. The Greek gods never dwelt with the people. The only time they dwelt with the people was to mess them up, to cause havoc. So in their stories, when these Greek gods, these little g gods were up in the stories and all about how they mess with your life. And then all of a sudden, there's a story about a capital G God who wants to dwell with you. He wants to hang with you. God wanted to dwell with his creation. This would have been hard to believe. It would have been totally unique. And God's plan to send Jesus to live and dwell with us was about the restoration of the relationship. It was the restoration of the relationship. Because he so loved us, he wants to be with us. I mean, surely to goodness, if you and I are going to craft this plan, it wouldn't involve the sacrifice of said Jesus. I mean, if it was up to me, I'm saying, hey, you come in, bring the military, let's wipe this thing out, let's get rid of the Romans, let's get rid of anybody that doesn't believe the way you are teaching us, and let's just live in this relationship. I mean, nobody on the planet would have saw this coming, because when God becomes human and he's dwelling with his people, and he says in John 10:14, he says, I'm the good shepherd. I know my sheep. I know you. I know my sheep. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Now, this is a plot twist. The plan for Jesus is to willingly lay down his life, to give himself up, to make the world right so you and I can live in this relationship. That would have been crazy. That is hard to believe, but I think what happens, what I feel happens inside of us, maybe it's just me, I think we say that so often that we forget to take that in of what that meant. We forget to grab a hold of this. And then he continues on in John 13 and says this, a new command I give you, love one another. Love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciple if you love one another. So as we're hearing about this love is about the sacrifice to restore relationship, the same way that Jesus loves us. Now, one of the things we talked about at Rewind Fast Forward a week ago Sunday was about this 5:16, praying in the AM, praying in the PM, that we'll be praying and setting your alarms. Hopefully you are doing this. Hopefully if you're watching with us online, you are setting those alarms. I got to tell you, I've been getting up at 5:10 and getting ready to pray at 5:16 in the morning, and I have every day this week, I was on it. I will tell you, I was hoping to cheat today. And I would do it in the evening because it's Sunday go to meeting, and I would sleep in just a little bit longer. The internal clock kicked off at 5:05. I woke up 5 minutes earlier today, and I got to know, my first prayer was, Lord, why? Why? But one of the things that we've been praying about is this revival, this renewal, and this refuel of our lives. And hopefully you are taking that serious and praying for this revival in our life, because they're going to know who you are by the way you love people. As we talked about COVID-killed community, the last year in our world, the last year in our country, we've not loved people well. We found more things to divide us and be angry about than to love them. And this is one of the markers. This is one of the footings that we can grab a hold when this world doesn't make sense and it's all jacked up, that we can hold on and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. God sent his son to restore the relationship with humanity. If that can happen, then I can love the people I don't agree with. I can even love the people that are spitting insults at me, that are mean, cruel, unjust. John 14 says this, verse 23 says, Jesus replied, anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and he will come to them and make our home with them. He will make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. So, and all of a sudden, we get to see this picture come to place that my Father will love them and will come to them and make our home. This ultimate love is gaining access. We no longer need a priest to go on our behalf. We get access to the Father. So maybe, how do we make sense out of this? How do we really wrap this up then? Today, if you're in this room or you're watching with you in your front room or your car or your work, whatever it may be, wherever you are at right now, if you were raising the inside voice of your hand just to do this, you don't have to do it for real, but if you were feeling unwanted, undervalued, unworthy, then I invite you to pause. If you feel like your world is coming apart, if you feel like that you are doing this alone, that your hurt and your pain are piling up at a rate you cannot make sense of the mess. I know it's easy to be said, but I encourage you, wherever you're at, to dive in and take hold of this, that the creator of the universe has made the relationship. He is restoring that relationship and wants to live, dwell, spend time with you. Not for what you do, not for what other people say you are, not for anything you've accomplished, not for your worst moment on the planet and not for your best moment on the planet. The creator of the universe just wants to be with you. He chooses you. He chooses you. No matter what's happening in your life, this is a footing, this is a mile marker, this is something you can grab a hold of. That when the pain is swelling, he's got you. We're going to sing this song as kind of a closing. This last song that we're going to do is this reckless love of God. I think it is unbelievably powerful. There's a few phrases that really stuck out to me. And here it is, he chases me down, fights until I'm found, and you give yourself away. That this holy God, who's restoring a relationship with you and I, is going to chase you down. He's going to keep working in your life. He's going to keep speaking. And when you feel alone, he's inviting you to crawl into his lap and find peace.